Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. After the main character dies, he wakes up inside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and he starts with Godzilla. What is he and Godzilla gonna do inside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
MCU, what if I start with Godzilla? Chapter 1, The Weight of Asphalt and Stars. Shredder's POV. I remember the sound first. Not the truck. Not the scream. The movie. Tony Stark's voice, thick with pain and finality, whispering "I am Iron Man" as he snapped his fingers and changed the shape of a universe that never really existed. That scene had always hit me harder than I liked to admit. Not because of the spectacle, God knows Marvel had trained us to flinch at spectacle, but because there was something so human in it. The smallest decision with the largest consequence. He didn't hesitate. Didn't run. He made peace with the choice before he even opened his mouth. I left the theater half numb, still blinking against the emotional residue, popcorn kernels stuck in my throat. My earbuds were in before I hit the sidewalk. The night was heavy with the smell of rain and exhaust fumes, sirens bleeding faintly through the streetlights. I didn't see the truck. Not until it was too late. One moment, I was stepping off the curb. The next impact. Blinding. Crushing. Quiet. There was no time to scream. Just a moment of stillness, my back hitting asphalt so hard it felt like I'd fallen from a building. The kind of silence that doesn't belong in a city. The kind that means something important just stopped. I remember looking up. Streetlights. Cloud cover. The vague taste of iron rising in my throat. Then nothing. No tunnel. No light. No judgment. Just darkness. It wasn't black, not really. Just absence. No sound. No temperature. Just floating in something too empty to be called a place. For a long time, I didn't know if I was dead or dreaming. I wasn't scared. Just hollow. Then came the ding. Soft. Clean. Digital. A single line of text formed in the dark like it had always been waiting for me to notice it. Welcome to the MCU. I didn't react at first. The words meant something, but they didn't mean anything. They just floated there white on nothing, simple and quiet. MCU. The abbreviation hit me like a forgotten dream. Marvel. But that didn't make sense. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't a simulation or a comic book forum or some crossover fan event. I wasn't laughing. I wasn't clapping. I was dead. Wasn't I? Then came breath. Real breath. Painful. Gasping. Like the first breath after drowning, my lungs clawed for air they weren't used to. My whole chest convulsed, my fingers spasming against coarse fabric as my mind tried to catch up with the sheer violence of living again. I opened my eyes. Fluorescent light. A ceiling white, grid, humming faintly. The scent of antiseptic and gauze. A hospital room. Panic hit in slow waves. I sat up too fast and felt everything at once, a stitch of pain in my ribs, dull pressure in my skull, the kind of internal disorientation you only get after waking up in someone else's bed or, in this case, someone else's body. Because these arms weren't mine. Too lean. Too long. The skin slightly paler than I remembered. My hands shook as I reached up to touch my face, half expecting to feel bandages. Instead, I found smooth skin, a sharp chin, unfamiliar cheekbones. I stumbled out of the bed. No IVs held me down. No machines beeped. The door was cracked slightly open. A nurse walked past the hall outside, didn't look in. I was alone. A chair beside the bed held clothes. Jeans. Plain sneakers. A soft grey hoodie with the tags still on. No wallet. No ID. No phone. Like someone had prepared the uniform of an anonymous man and left it here for me to wear. I dressed quickly, fingers trembling with every button. The weight in my chest wasn't fear, not exactly, it was calculation. I needed to move. I needed to blend. If anyone came in, I didn't know who they thought I was, or what name I was supposed to answer to. I moved to the mirror. What I saw wasn't horrifying. Just unfamiliar. Early 20s. Brown hair, unkempt. Eyes a little too sharp. A face that wouldn't stand out in a crowd, but wouldn't disappear either. Something behind the expression looked tired, older than it should have been. I pressed both palms to the sink and tried to slow my breathing. Then I heard it again. That ding. Starter package unlocked. Additional assets pending. Survival settings, custom. The text wasn't coming from the room. It wasn't from the mirror or some screen. It was, in me. Not like a voice, not even like thought. Just knowledge, being injected straight into the space behind my eyes. I staggered back, hand on the wall. Something was happening. Something that didn't fit any rulebook I had. But there was no time to freeze. No tutorial. No explanation. Just those quiet, polite lines of information, as if reality itself had decided I didn't need to be told why. Just what next? I looked down at my shaking hands. Took a breath. I don't know what this is, I whispered, barely audible. But I'm not dying again. Not in this world. I cracked the door open and stepped out. No alarms triggered. No one stopped me. The system was silent. The world outside was not. I walked out of the hospital into a New York that didn't feel like mine. Billboards glowed with Stark Industries logos. A newsstand sold copies of the Daily Bugle. Somewhere far off, a green-tinted billboard read, "Have you seen this man?" Next to a grainy photo of Bruce Banner. I knew this place. But I didn't. And that meant one thing. Whatever game this was, I wasn't a player. I was a piece. And I would have to move very carefully. Chapter 2, A Gift with Scales. Shredder's POV. The apartment was too clean. Not tidy clean, in the way an unfurnished rental always is, like someone scrubbed the personality out with bleach and forgot to repaint. The windows rattled faintly with the wind off the East River. The radiator hissed even when it was off. The door had 3 locks, but the wood was soft and thin, and I didn't trust any of them. Still. It was shelter. I stood in the middle of the room for a long time, just listening. Trying to understand if this place had a history, a past, any weight. But the silence was empty. And the fridge worked. I had no idea how I got here. The last thing I remembered was walking out of the hospital and turning left. Then the world tilted, not like vertigo, not like anything physical. A sensation like reality itself pivoted behind my back, and when I blinked, the apartment key was in my hand. The door unlocked for me. The lights turned on. No one asked questions. No neighbors stared. No file in the kitchen drawer. No name on the lease. Just this place. And then it happened. A soft, synthetic chime. That sound again. Like a notification on a phone that wasn't mine. I turned slowly. My heart rate spiked without permission. There was nothing in the room. But I saw the words. Not on the wall. Not in the air. Just present, in the way certain truths don't have to be spoken aloud. Welcome package delivered. Starter companion, Godzilla, infant stage has been assigned. Bonded asset. Evolution unlocked through sustained care and nuclear energy exposure. Warning: feeding nuclear energy to companion will decrease host's classification and system integrity. My breath caught. I took a step back, then froze. There was a noise coming from the kitchen. Not loud. Not threatening. Just curious. Click. Thud. Click. Tiny claws on linoleum. Something with weight, but not size. I didn't call out. I didn't grab a weapon. I watched. And after a moment, it emerged. From behind the fridge. At first, I thought it was a hallucination. A toy. A miniature model left by some child I didn't know. But it moved with purpose, with weight. The creature was no longer than my forearm, maybe the size of a housecat, with sleek black scales that shimmered faintly under the fluorescent light. Its eyes were sharp yellow, ringed in deeper amber, and its tail dragged with slow precision behind it like it didn't quite trust the ground yet. But what caught me most were the spines. 3 dorsal plates not fully formed, but unmistakable. Jagged ridges of bone edged in faint silver blue. Godzilla. Not the Godzilla. Just a beginning. The creature stopped, blinked up at me once, and tilted its head. I didn't move. It didn't growl. Instead, it yawned, tiny white fangs glinting, and then ambled toward me across the floor with the unsteady gait of something still learning how to walk. I crouched slowly. It didn't flinch. I extended one hand open, not reaching. A breath held in the space between us. It stepped forward and head-butted my palm. Firm. Deliberate. Like it was testing whether I was solid. The warmth surprised me. Its body radiated heat, not dangerously, not yet, but like a living coal had been buried just beneath its skin. I felt a low purring vibration under my hand. Not a sound. A resonance. As if it wasn't just alive, but aware. And for a moment, I forgot to breathe. I sat on the floor. The thing curled beside my thigh, tail coiling neatly around itself, eyes half-lidded now in something like satisfaction. A system. A creature. And me, just a man with no name, no past, and no idea what the rules were. But this thing? It knew me. It had chosen me. I opened my mouth. No words came out. Instead, the system responded. No voice. Just knowledge sliding in through the back of my skull. Companion asset evolution requires external nuclear energy input. User classification and system privileges will decrease with each successful enhancement. I frowned. Classification. There was no clarification. No detail. Just that single warning again. System integrity will lower with each feeding cycle. So the creature Godzilla could grow. Could evolve. But at a cost. Mine. I didn't know what classification meant. Was I ranked? Protected? Watched? Were there other system users? I had no answers. Only risk. And the creature beside me, already asleep. Its tail twitched once as I stood. Its spines dimmed to a soft blue glow. I turned on the apartment's ancient heating unit and sat on the edge of the cot that counted as a bed. Godzilla breathed softly. The heat from his body had already begun to rise again, and I wondered idly, distantly, if the thing would ever stop growing. I touched his back once, lightly. His plates stirred. "You're not just a gift," I whispered. "You're a question." He didn't answer. But I had the feeling he would, in time. And that whatever came next, I wouldn't be able to survive it alone. Chapter 3, Cold Streets Before Sunrise. Shredder's POV. I woke in the dark. Not from a nightmare. There were no dreams. Just that same flat nothingness I'd learned to expect when sleep found me here. Empty space, no edge, no anchor. My body rose to consciousness the way a diver surfaces from deep water, slowly, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat. Godzilla was curled against my side. He was warmer now. His breathing heavier than it had been the night before, like his tiny body had spent the hours rearranging itself, growing into the shape it had been promised. His dorsal plates had sharpened at the tips. Not by much but enough to cut cloth if he wanted to. I ran my hand gently along his spine. He rumbled in his chest, that deep, subterranean sound I was starting to understand as contentment. His tail twitched once, then wrapped tighter around my hip like a sleeping cat trying to anchor itself. "Come in," I murmured. "We need to walk." He blinked once, then stood. No protest. The city outside the window was still half asleep. Pale halos of streetlight bled across wet pavement. The sky was that bruised blue before dawn, when even New York forgets how to make noise. A few distant taxis rolled through the avenues, but no pedestrians. No distractions. It was the perfect time to disappear. I pulled on the hoodie, shoved my hands in the pockets, and headed down the stairs. Godzilla padded after me, quiet as shadow. We slipped into the street without a word. No one looked. No one pointed. Even when we passed a delivery driver yawning beside his van, the man's eyes skipped right past the small reptilian creature at my feet like he wasn't there. Just like before. The system was still hiding him. I should have been relieved, but the more I thought about it, the more that kind of protection felt like a leash. Not mine, his. Someone, or something, didn't want the world to see him. Not yet. We walked east. Past closed storefronts, shuttered bodegas, construction sites ghosted in tarp. I didn't have a destination. Just a goal. A phone. Something to tether me to this world before it moved on without me. But I didn't have money. Not enough. Not even clothes. I stopped in front of a cell phone store near Alphabet City. The kind with unlit neon signs and prepaid SIMs taped to the glass. No alarms. No branding. Just a locked door and a wall of tech no one was awake to sell me. I reached into my pocket. Nothing. Of course. Godzilla made a small noise beside me, low, half a growl, half a question. I looked down at him. "I need money," I said aloud, even though I knew he didn't understand the words. "We're going to Hell's Kitchen." His eyes narrowed slightly. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was instinct. We walked west. The streets changed as we moved. Clean concrete gave way to cracked sidewalks and rusted fire escapes. Faded graffiti layered over older tags. It wasn't dangerous, not yet, but it felt like a place where rules weren't written down. The kind of neighborhood where survival wasn't about law, just proximity and reputation. Exactly the kind of place someone like me could find fast cash. It didn't take long. An alley. A man shouting. Someone pleading. I turned the corner and saw three of them, late 20s, maybe 30s. Ball caps, knives, the kind of swagger that comes from never being challenged. They had someone pressed to the wall. A teenager. Backpack half ripped open, shoes scraped raw like he'd run too far. I didn't speak. Godzilla was already moving. He sprinted forward, claws scraping concrete, mouth open with a low, vibrating sound that rose in pitch as he closed the distance. The first man turned too slow. Godzilla leapt. A blur of motion. A slash of tail. The man hit the wall hard, spine first, then dropped. The second backed up, knife raised, panic flaring in his eyes. Godzilla's plates lit. Not a full blast, just a flicker. A warning. The blue-white glow gathered in his throat, heat swirling in the air around him. The man dropped the knife and ran. The third tried to run too. He didn't get far. Godzilla caught his ankle with a flick of his tail, pulled him down hard, and snarled over his face until the man sobbed and passed out. The teenager had already vanished. I stepped into the alley slowly, boots scraping wet concrete. Godzilla looked up at me. His plates dimmed. His breathing was sharp, but not ragged. He didn't seem winded, just alert, watching me for instruction. I looked down at the bodies. One had a wallet. A thick one. Rolled with 20s, probably from whatever corner business he was bleeding dry. Another had a Rolex. Not top tier, but close. Just clean enough to sell. I took them both. Not because I enjoyed it. Not because I felt entitled. Because I didn't have a choice. We left the alley without a word. Back to the store. The same neon lights. The same locked door. This time, I had cash. I bought the cheapest Android model with GPS, Wi-Fi, and a SIM card. The man behind the counter didn't look up from his newspaper. His eyes slid over Godzilla and landed on the register like the world had simply rewritten itself to include us. I stepped outside and leaned against the brick wall beside the door. Godzilla sat at my feet. Tail curled. Quiet again. I pulled up the notepad app and typed. Why does no one react to him? The system answered instantly. For your protection, the companion is hidden from non-threat entities. Civilian perception suppression, active. I stared at the words. Suppression. A nice word for manipulation. They weren't ignoring Godzilla. They couldn't see him. Unless something wanted them to. I looked down. He looked back. Small. Lethal. Unquestionably real. And I was starting to realize. I was the only one who truly knew he existed. I slid the phone into my pocket and began to walk again. I didn't know where this ended. But I knew one thing for certain. If they couldn't see him, they wouldn't see me coming either. Chapter 4, The Man Buried in Headlines. Shredder's POV. The apartment felt colder when I returned. Maybe it was the wind slipping through the window seals. Maybe it was the thin grey sky pressing down on the city. Or maybe it was just me, now holding a burner phone, a borrowed life, and a sleeping monster that breathed like an engine beside the radiator. Godzilla dozed lightly under the table. His scales were warm against the floor. His tail curled around the leg of the chair like he was anchoring himself to something solid. I wasn't sure if it was me, or the room. The phone buzzed weakly as it finished loading the homepage of the news app I'd installed in the alley. No notifications. No targeted ads. No algorithm yet. Just a simple crawl of headlines. I wasn't looking for anything specific. But something found me. Second from the top, tagged Underworld News, dated less than an hour ago. Billionaire Tony Stark missing in Afghanistan, military confirms. I stared at it. Not because I was surprised. Not because I didn't believe it. But because suddenly the world had shown its hand. I tapped the article. The photo was him. Younger than I remembered. Still smug around the eyes, like he hadn't figured out yet how fragile the air was around him. The story was thin, half speculation, half deflection. A press release quoting defense contractors and anonymous military sources. Stark Industries was working with authorities, deeply concerned, praying for a swift resolution. But there was no resolution. Not yet. Somewhere out there on the other side of the world, buried under dirt and blood and metal, Tony Stark was alive. Probably dying. Probably halfway to realizing the weapons he'd designed were now pointed directly at his ribcage. And no one could help him. Not yet. I sat slowly on the edge of the bed. The phone screen dimmed. The headline still burned into my vision. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Not awe. Not panic. Not excitement. Just opportunity. I looked down at Godzilla, who stirred slightly as my weight shifted the mattress. One golden eye opened. He didn't speak, but he didn't need to. I'm going to find him, I said. He blinked once. Not understanding but listening. If I save Tony Stark, I whispered, I won't need to hide. I won't need to steal phones or sleep in rented air. I'll matter. The words tasted strange. Not because they were untrue. Because they were real. I reached for the watch I'd taken earlier, the Rolex. Still in my hoodie pocket, wrapped in a crumpled napkin. Not pristine, but enough to move on, the kind of market where no one checks serial numbers too closely. 20 minutes later, I was standing in a pawn shop in Chinatown, speaking as little as possible while a man with smudged glasses and a yellowed undershirt weighed the watch in his palm like it owed him an apology. He gave me $900 in cash. No questions. I walked straight to a rundown travel agent's booth 3 blocks over. Plastic chairs. Laminated brochures. A woman at the counter with tired eyes who barely looked up when I said the word Islamabad. I didn't ask for Afghanistan. No one flew there directly. Not without clearance. But Pakistan's northern border was loose. The kind of line you crossed if you knew how to disappear for a day or two. I have cash, I said. She didn't smile. Just tapped her keyboard. $476. One way. No refunds. I paid. I took the ticket. I didn't say anything else. By sundown, I was on a flight. By midnight, I was gone. The plane was nearly empty. Most of the passengers were NGO workers, contractors, oil reps. People who smelled like they had reasons not to talk. Godzilla rode in the satchel under my seat. The system had made him invisible again. No barking dogs. No baggage checks. Even the man at security who opened the zipper looked directly at him and then said, "Nice coat," like he was staring at a pile of laundry. I didn't correct him. Godzilla didn't make a sound the whole flight. He didn't need to. Every so often, I felt his body shift small pulses of heat warming my feet through the thin floor of the plane. He was growing again. Slowly. Something in him always restless, always building. I stared out the window. There was nothing to see but cloud. But I wasn't watching the sky. I was watching the future. And this time, I was going to grab it with both hands. Chapter 5, Smoke on the Border. Wind. Shredder's POV. The border was dust. No wall, no fence. Just terrain that changed its mind. Mountains fell into sand. Rocks crumbled into ravines. The sky turned white, then grey, then the color of dried blood as we crossed into no man's land under cover of dusk. No one stopped us. No patrols. No checkpoint. That was the thing about this part of the world. Once you passed through the last official town, the world turned into a rumor. And the people in charge weren't the kind who stamped passports. I moved quickly and quietly. I'd paid a fixer in Islamabad for the last leg, a half-legitimate, half-suicidal bus route that dropped me outside a mining outpost too remote to show up on maps. From there, I walked. Alone. Through hills lined with shale and silence. Not alone, really. Godzilla followed like a shadow. He kept close. His tail no longer dragged. He lifted it when we moved, coiled it when we stopped. He was heavier now. His spines had thickened, the blue at their edges brightening to the sharp hue of electric veins. And he watched. Every sound. Every shift in wind. He was adapting faster than I could track. At night, I didn't sleep. I just rested with my back against a rock and listened to the wind tear through the valleys. My phone had no signal, no GPS. The only map I had was a worn satellite image I'd screenshot in a cafe hours before the flight. No names, just terrain. I stared at the screen in intervals, matching it against the horizon. Somewhere near these coordinates, the 10 rings had their compound. And somewhere inside it, Tony Stark. I didn't plan to charge in blind. I wasn't suicidal. I was just desperate in a way that had started to harden into purpose. Godzilla made a low sound behind me, head tilted toward a canyon ahead. I followed his gaze. Nothing obvious. But the ground shifted here, no natural slope. Flattened at the base. Erosion didn't do that. Construction did. A dead zone of compacted soil, tire tracks half covered by dust. Farther down the ridge, a glint of metal barely poked from under a tarp. I crouched low. Scanned the ridge. Waited. Then I saw it. Movement. 2 men walking the perimeter of a sunken trail, a sentry line masked by hills and shallow embankments. Not uniformed. Local clothes, old rifles. They walked with the same loose arrogance as men who thought their enemies were miles away. I made note of every step they took. Every blind spot in their rotation. Every choke point. Then we pulled back. I didn't want a fight yet. We camped for the night in a slit of stone between 2 ridges, sheltered from wind and line of sight. Godzilla curled against me, warmer than any blanket. I looked at him in the dark, my eyes adjusting to the faint glow from his plates. "You're not afraid of them, are you?" I whispered. His throat rumbled once. "Not yes. Not no. Just present. I think we'll need a way in without melting the whole place." He flicked his tail once in response. "I know," I muttered. "That's your specialty." The next morning, I scouted closer. The camp was larger than I'd expected. 3 central structures, 1 metal, 1 stone, and 1 half buried under camouflage netting. Armed guards stood watch, but they weren't coordinated. No discipline. Just threat. Which meant they relied on fear more than strategy. That gave me a chance. I watched for hours. Tracked every shift in the pattern. Every delivery truck. Every shouted command. They hadn't moved Stark. He was still here. I could feel it. When the sun dipped behind the ridge and the shadows stretched long across the canyon, I leaned close to Godzilla and whispered, "Tonight." He didn't blink. He was already moving toward the slope. Stealthy. Focused. A weapon waiting to be used. Not for destruction. For surgical precision. Chapter 6, Sparks Behind Steel Walls. Shredder's POV. The sand barely made a sound beneath our feet. Godzilla stayed close to my side, low to the ground, moving like something born in darkness. The compound crouched ahead of us, quiet under the shallow crescent of moonlight, half its defenses blinded by routine and overconfidence. We waited just beyond the ridge. I ran through the plan again, not because it was good, but because it was all I had. Wait for the guards to change shift. Slip past the eastern blind spot. Breach from the secondary maintenance tunnel carved into the slope. A narrow path may be used for ventilation, maybe storage. No patrols. I'd watched it for a day. I adjusted the scarf around my mouth and nodded once. Godzilla moved first. He slinked ahead, tail pulled tight, spines dimmed to the barest shimmer. The mouth of the tunnel came into view, rusted metal bolted into the rock, barely 6 feet tall and half buried in sand. I reached the door. Pressed my ear against it. Nothing inside. I glanced at Godzilla, who flicked his tail once in confirmation. We moved. Inside, the air was dry and metallic, laced with the stale scent of sweat and diesel fumes. The passage sloped downward. Faint light bled in through grates above enough to cast thin, shifting lines across the walls. Voices echoed distantly. Arabic. English. Laughter. Too relaxed. They weren't expecting visitors. We kept low. I counted every footstep. Every junction. I'd studied the layout from above, sketched it into my palm with a piece of charcoal. If this tunnel connected to the secondary generator room, then from there, 2 walls separated us from the detention block. 2 walls. That was the problem. I crouched near the final bend and placed my hand on the warm steel. Ready? I whispered. Godzilla responded not with a growl, but a steady pulse of light across his plates, his version of a nod. I stood back. One short inhale from him, and then. The blast wasn't loud. It wasn't a roar or a beam. Just a pulse of focused atomic heat, channeled into a cutting point the size of a man's chest. The metal wall groaned, buckled inward, then hissed as it peeled like foil under pressure. I slipped through before the sound could echo. And I was inside. A storage hall. Crates stacked high. 2 guards. One at the far end. One half asleep against a support pillar. I didn't hesitate. Godzilla took the left. I took the right. The one closest never saw me coming. A sharp elbow. A knee to the back of the skull. He dropped like dead weight. The second turned at the sound. Godzilla moved faster. A claw to the shin, a leap, and the man's scream died in his throat. We didn't wait to see if anyone heard. I moved quickly to the next door, steel, locked, no window. I pressed my ear to it. Faint beeping. A heartbeat monitor? I knocked once, firmly. Silence. Then a voice strained, skeptical. What now? American. Horse. Stark. I exhaled once. Then spoke. I'm here to get you out. Another silence. Then laughter, dry and disbelieving. You with shield? He asked. No. Then you're a hallucination. I pressed my hand to the wall. Then open the door and test it. More silence. Then the sound of something scraping. Metal against metal. A latch turning. The door cracked open. Only a few inches. Just enough for a wary eye to look out. And there he was. Tony Stark. Gaunt. Dirty. Eyes too sharp for a man on the edge of collapse. Behind him stood an older man, calmer, lean, his face lined with resolve and sorrow. Jensen. You don't look like one of them, Jensen said. I'm not. Who are you? I hesitated. Then, someone who made a decision. Tony's eyes dropped. To Godzilla. The creature stood quietly beside me now, head lowered, eyes glowing like lit coals. Tony didn't speak for a full 5 seconds. Then, what the hell is that? Help, I said. If you let me. The door opened. Fully, this time. Tony staggered slightly as he backed away. One hand on his chest, the crude arc reactor humming like an old engine. Jensen moved to support him. Godzilla stepped into the room slowly, his tail low, body coiled not in aggression, but protection. Jensen's eyes didn't leave him. Is it safe? If I tell him to be, I said. Tony sat heavily on a cot fashioned out of broken panels and tarps. He rubbed his face with one hand. I should be dead, he muttered. I was dead. You're not, I said. Because I'm here now. He looked up at me. Eyes narrowing. I don't know who you are. I don't know what that thing is. But if you can get me out of this hole, then I'll listen. That's all I need. Yinsen looked between us. We don't have long. The guards rotate in 20 minutes. I nodded. That's enough. I knelt beside Godzilla, placed one hand on his shoulder. His plates sparked dim, but ready. He was waiting for my signal. And this time, I would give it. Chapter 7, Into the Burning Horizon. Shredder's POV. The escape didn't begin with a gunfight. It began with a door. Rust-bitten steel swung outward on its hinges, the hinges squealing loud enough to wake the dead. The hallway beyond was empty for now. Pipes lined the walls. Buzzing lights hung from exposed wiring. The whole place looked like it had been assembled by hand, out of salvaged war machines in panic. Yinsen was already at Stark's side, half carrying, half guiding him as we moved. Tony stumbled, but he didn't complain. He kept one hand tight on the reactor in his chest, like it might fall out if he let go. Godzilla moved ahead of us, quiet and alert. We took the long path down the side corridors I'd marked from the day before, the ones with no cameras, the ones with the floor slightly worn from being walked, but not too often. Not the main exit. Not where they'd expect a jailbreak. We almost made it. Then we hit the junction. A single guard. Big. Older. Wearing a reinforced vest and carrying an automatic rifle that looked American but wasn't. He stood in the middle of the corridor, perfectly still. No confusion on his face. No hesitation. He wasn't like the others. He knew. And he was waiting. He raised the rifle. Godzilla leapt. No light, no growl, just speed. A blur of black scales and coiled force. He struck the man low, slamming his shoulder into the guard's ribs and driving him back into the wall. The rifle clattered to the floor. The guard's head cracked against the steel, and he went limp, sliding down like a broken puppet. Godzilla landed silently, tail curling protectively in front of Tony and Yinsen. Stark stared. That thing is, very well trained. He's observant, I said. Yeah, that's what I said when I first saw a tank, too. We didn't stop. Godzilla led the way now, at full pace. We pushed through a storage corridor, ducked under a hanging tarp, and shoved open a side door that opened to the canyon wall. Fresh air hit us like a punch, hot, dry, searing with sand and sunrise. We were almost there. And then we weren't. Voices rose behind us. Dozens of them. Shouting. Footsteps. The compound's hive had stirred. And then I saw them at the edge of the valley floor, clustered like insects around a dropped carcass. 20 men. Maybe more. Armed, armored, fanned out in a half-moon between us and the only safe path out. Stark groaned. Tell me you've got a second Godzilla in your pocket. Just the one. Great. Godzilla's plates lit. Not softly. Not subtly. This time, he didn't hold back. The light climbed his spine like a signal flare. Blue-white energy pulsed from his chest, swirling up through his throat in a hiss of steam and pressure. The men didn't have time to react. He roared. And the blast ripped through them. Not a wide arc. Not a carpet of fire. Just one clean, focused beam scorching earth and air in a straight path, scattering bodies like dolls. The men who weren't hit directly ran. Or fell. Or screamed. I didn't stop to count. Move. I shouted. Yinsen dragged Tony forward. Godzilla followed, tail low and eyes glowing, body still steaming from the release. We ran. Down the slope, across broken terrain, past old mine machinery and fractured rock. The compound shrank behind us. Gunfire cracked wildly into the sky, aimless and too late. We didn't stop. Not until the canyon gave way to open desert. Not until there was nothing behind us but silence and dust. We kept walking. Sand poured into our boots. The sky flared orange as the sun dragged itself over the horizon. And then Stark fell. He didn't trip. He didn't stagger. He just dropped to his knees, sank backward into the sand, and let out a long, wheezing breath like it was the last one he'd planned to take. "I could die now," he said. Yinsen leaned over him, checking the arc reactor. Still functional. Flickering faintly, but solid. "You'll live," I said. Tony laughed once. "That's a shame. Wait a bit longer." He looked at me from where he lay, sweat streaking his face. "You always this motivational?" I didn't answer. Godzilla stood beside him, silent again. His plates dimmed, steam rising faintly from between them. Tired. But ready if called. I looked up. And heard it. Faint at first. A hum. Then a roar. Then rotors. A military transport. Low. Fast. Coming in from the west, flanked by 2 escort drones. A black speck against the pale blaze of the sky. The sound grew louder. A shadow passed over us. Tony blinked at it. "Rhodey." The plane dropped lower, circled once, then descended into a hover as its landing gear deployed. The side door opened before it touched down. A man stepped out, black vest, headset, boots coated in dust. "Rhodey." He didn't run. He walked. Straight toward Tony, jaw tight. He stopped 5 feet away. Looked at me. Then at Godzilla. Then back again. "You wanna tell me who the hell you are," he said, voice low, clipped, "and why there's a dinosaur standing over Tony Stark?" Tony sat up slowly, wincing. "He's not a dinosaur." "Is that your only note right now?" "He saved my life." Rhodey raised an eyebrow. Tony pointed a shaking hand at me. "So did he." Rhodey looked me up and down. "Name?" he asked. "Don't have one you'd believe." Godzilla growled softly. Rhodey's eyes narrowed. "Right." Tony was already on his feet now, barely, with Yinsen's help. "Questions later," he said. "Right now I need food. Then I'm going to sleep for about 6 years." Godzilla and I watched in silence as Rhodey helped Stark up the ramp. At the doorway, Stark turned. Looked at me. He didn't thank me. But he didn't look away, either. Then he disappeared into the plane. The door closed. And the sky swallowed them whole. Chapter 8, What We Feed to Monsters. Shredder's POV. The train ride out of Afghanistan was as illegal as it was quiet. I paid a man in Quetta $50 to smuggle me across the border, then 50 more to get me onto the freight train heading north through Pakistan. I said nothing. Neither did he. The kind of silence you buy with cash and body language. Godzilla rode in a crate custom built, assembled from scavenged scrap and padded with old rubber matting. I poked holes in the side and cut the lock so he could open it from within. He never made a sound. A few times, I looked through the slats. He was sleeping. But not small anymore. His spines had thickened, his body stretched longer, and his tail barely coiled in the tight space. Each breath carried steam. I could feel the heat radiating off the metal even from where I sat. By the time I reached Islamabad, I wasn't anonymous anymore. The airport wouldn't take me. Neither would any standard flight path. So I went the long way. Trains. Buses. Dirt roads and stranger routes. Bribery and fake documents. And finally Canada. I crossed the border into British Columbia under grey skies and a borrowed name, carrying a satchel packed with fake documentation, local cash, and one nuclear fire-breathing anomaly I couldn't afford to let grow uncontrolled. The land here was forest and fog, valleys hung with mist like draped silk. Snow in the corners of mountain roads. Rivers running too cold for comfort. I'd memorized every footpath from the border to the town of Rossland, a quiet place with one secret I cared about more than the rest. He lived 2 hours out. In a shack that didn't belong to anyone. Deep woods. Off-grid. Alone. Banner. He wasn't called that here. The names changed. So did the jobs. But the movements didn't. I'd followed them. Through pharmacy records. Backwoods clinic visits. One very specific case of someone buying too much quinine and gamma shielding from a logging surplus shop. I found him on the third morning. Collecting snowmelt in a plastic basin, his face more gaunt than I remembered, a flannel shirt stretched over a frame that looked like it hadn't seen sleep in weeks. He didn't notice me until I was 3 feet away. "Hi," I said. He turned too late. Godzilla struck. A blur of scale and weight. He lunged low from the trees, tackled Banner into the snow, and pinned him with one clawed foot. Not enough to break anything. Just to hold. I moved quickly. Robe. Ice water. A heavy breath as I dragged him into the shelter and secured his wrists and ankles to a load-bearing post. He woke to the splash, coughing and struggling. Eyes wide. Green simmering just behind the edges. "You with the military," he rasped. "No." "Shield." "No." He blinked fast, breath fogging in the cold air. "Then why the hell am I tied to a wall?" "Because I need something from you. And I don't have time to convince you nicely." "You're making a mistake," he said, voice trembling now. "You don't know what I am." "I do," I said. Calmly. "I just don't care." His face twisted. "You'll get people killed." "Not today." His eyes drifted past me to the corner of the shack, where Godzilla crouched. Watching. Waiting. Spines glowing faintly in the shadowed light. Banner stared. "You brought a kaiju to my door." "Not yet," I said. "But we're getting there." He swallowed. "What do you want?" "You're going to expose him to the same radiation you used to survive. Gamma, ionized, the whole mix." He blinked. "You want me to Hulk him?" "I want him to grow." He shook his head. "No. No way. That's not how this works. You can't just." "Will you do it or not?" I cut him off, voice low. "Because I don't have time for lectures. Either you help me, or I'll find someone else." He went still. "How do you even know about any of this?" I met his gaze. "I have my sources." A pause. "Then, you're playing with fire." "I'm feeding it." He looked at Godzilla again. Then at me. "You're crazy." "No," I said. "I'm desperate." He sighed. "Untie me. I'll need to calibrate equipment. And if this thing blows up, it's on you. I'm used to things being on me." He didn't speak again. I cut the ropes. He didn't run. By nightfall, the cabin had become a lab. Crude, improvised, dangerous, but a lab nonetheless. The generator hummed with a growl. Banner adjusted the shielding plates on a pulse array made from salvaged industrial filters in a mining company's discarded exposure chamber. Godzilla didn't flinch when the door closed around him. He crouched inside the reactor housing like it was a womb. Waiting. 30 seconds, Banner said. "No more. He can't take what I took. His biology isn't." "I'll stop it." Banner nodded once. then flipped the switch. Green light bathed the room. Godzilla opened his mouth. Not in pain. In response. He breathed it in every pulse, every wavelength, every drop of invisible poison. His eyes flared white. His spine plates surged with blinding heat. His body trembled not with weakness, but with momentum. And then the system whispered in my mind like a thread of static. Infant asset upgraded, classification Titan class. New trait unlocked, morphological size adjustment enabled. Companion may now shift between tactical size forms at will, based on threat parameters and environmental scale. When the chamber door opened, he filled half the room. No longer cat-sized. No longer fragile. He stood the size of a house. Plates like jagged teeth, claws like daggers, breath steaming in great coils as his massive tail coiled around the foundation beams. I looked at him. And he looked back. Banner staggered a step backward. "What the hell did I just make?" he asked. I didn't answer. Godzilla took one step forward. The whole cabin shook. Chapter 9, Power Measured in Silence. Shredder's POV. The mountain didn't shake but the air did. Every breath I took felt like it was carrying weight now. Invisible pressure that bent the trees, pressed snow from the branches. The sky above Banner's cabin had turned darker than dusk, as if the light itself bent away from the thing crouched beside me. Godzilla had grown. Not just in size. In presence. He no longer filled the room. He defined it. A living fault line. Breath hot as furnace smoke, his newly thickened tail twitching once with a sound like a felled tree hitting the ground. The boards beneath his feet creaked. The generator died with a pop. Even Banner flinched. Godzilla looked at me. He knew he'd changed. And the system confirmed it in that same cold, clinical voice behind my eyes. Warning, Companion's energy signature has surpassed global normalization thresholds. World state correction protocols pending. World state correction. Which meant the world would react. We couldn't stay. I stepped back into the cold and pulled the jacket tighter over my shoulders. Snow crunched underfoot. Godzilla ducked beneath the ruined threshold of the door, then halted outside. He didn't complain. He didn't make a sound. "Where are you going?" Banner called after me. "South." "That's specific." "America." I didn't explain further. I didn't need to. Godzilla stepped forward and I watched. His bones flexed. His muscles compressed. In a span of 4 seconds, his body contracted, folding inward like a tectonic plate reversing. His plates lowered, retracted slightly. The blue glow didn't vanish, it focused, threading tightly through new, slimmer limbs. When the light faded, he was the size of a large dog again. Still dense. Still powerful. But mobile. Adapted. Banner stared. That shouldn't be possible. He's not limited by should. I looked back at the cabin. At the isolation Banner had carved for himself. The fear in his posture hadn't faded. But it wasn't aimed at me anymore. "Come with us," I said. He frowned. "You're joking." "No." He folded his arms. "Why?" "You're a liability when you're alone." Banner's eyes sharpened. "That's supposed to be a threat." "No," I said. "It's a fact. You turn, and there's no one to stop it." "But if he's near?" I looked down at Godzilla, who sat now with his tail curled neatly beside my boot. His head tilted. He could stop anything. Banner was quiet. "Then, I'll get my coat." We crossed the border under a different name, this time with better papers. Godzilla passed again as a trained support animal, though no one looked closely enough to challenge it. The system's suppression helped, but less now. A few glances lingered too long. One child whispered something about a dragon before her mother tugged her away. I didn't speak. We boarded a charter plane in Vancouver. Banner sat by the window. Godzilla curled beneath our row, limbs tucked, plates humming with quiet energy. I stared at the screen on the seat back in front of me, watching the digital line trace toward California. I didn't know what I would say to Tony Stark. But I knew what I needed from him. Malibu. The air smelled like salt and money. The cliffside home was precisely the kind of place you built when you didn't care what gravity thought. Steel curves, glass walls, an entryway with no visible handle. Stark's assistant met us at the edge of the driveway. Pepper Potts. Hair perfect. Eyes calculating. Posture just tight enough to be wary. She looked at me, then at Banner. Then finally at Godzilla. No comment. She stepped aside. He's been waiting. The inside of the house was part lab, part showroom, part abandoned war bunker. Glass tablets scattered over desks, blueprints spooling across a digital projector, arc reactor cores in various phases of dissection. Tony stood by the far window, a glass of something dark in hand. He turned. Hey, he said. You. Me. I never got your name. You still haven't. He smirked. You don't talk much, hey. Only when I need to. Banner stayed close, arms folded. Pepper's eyes bounced between the three of us like she was cataloging threats. Tony finally waved a hand. This guy sorry, still don't remember your name shows up in Afghanistan, kicks down the door with a, whatever that is, he gestured at Godzilla, and pulls me out before the guys with the guns can finish the job. I'm told that's not standard rescue protocol. Pepper's voice was even. Calm. But sharp. Godzilla walked ahead and sat beside me. His head turned toward the window. Outside, the ocean rolled like breathing glass. Tony looked at Pepper. And yet, I know what you're going to ask. Why? Yes, she said. Why would someone like that help someone like you? Tony glanced at me. I didn't answer. He shrugged. Didn't ask. I was too busy trying not to die. A long pause. Pepper exhaled softly. Do we need to worry about it? Godzilla blinked once. Not hostile. Just aware. He's not the problem, I said. Not unless you make him one. Tony laughed under his breath. All right. Good. Because I've decided I'm going to stop selling weapons. Pepper turned to him. What? Tony walked toward the display table, tapped a few buttons, and brought up a rotating 3D model. An armored suit. Compact. Red and gold. Sleek. Aggressive. From now on, Tony said, voice flat, I build something better. He tapped the screen again. I'm calling it Iron Man. Chapter 10, Eyes Beneath the Surface. Shredder's POV. The workshop breathed like a living thing. Every wall hummed with motion. Articulated arms moved along rail mounts, sparks jumped from solder tips, and digital blueprints flickered as if stirred by thought instead of touch. Stark Industries tech wasn't designed to be quiet. It announced itself bright, brazen, and expensive. Tony moved between tables like he'd never left. No limp. No hesitation. Just caffeine, ego, and momentum. I wasn't trying to build a weapon, he said, not looking at me. Not at first. I stood near the far railing, watching Godzilla doze in the sun like a myth trying to nap without being noticed. Even at his current size dog-like, if dogs had dorsal spines and nuclear hearts, he made the floor vibrate when he shifted. Back in that cave, Tony continued, I told them I'd make a missile system. Jericho. Stark class. I gave them just enough truth to keep them patient. But what I was really building was an escape hatch. He gestured to the screen hovering in front of him. A rough wireframe of the Mark I suit rotated slowly. Clunky, unfinished. But brutal. Pure function. I needed to walk out of that cave, he said. So I built something that could carry me. Through stone, fire, and bullets. He glanced over his shoulder. You showed up before I had to use it. I didn't speak. Didn't move. He turned back to his console and started inputting new data points. Lighter frame materials. Torque adjustments. Energy stabilization. I was going to burn them all, he said softly. The way he said it wasn't bitter. Just true. I know, I said. He looked up at that. Not shocked. Just curious. Measuring. Do you? I didn't blink. I can guess. For a while, the only sounds were Godzilla's breathing and the soft clicks of design software. Then Pepper Potts entered the room. Heels on metal. Poised, but not sharp. Not yet. She didn't speak to Tony. She spoke to me. I ran your photo through every federal, state, and international security database, she said. I stayed silent. Nothing. No birth records. No ID. No biometrics. She stepped a little closer. Godzilla stirred beside me, lifting his head. She stopped. Even military blacklists didn't turn up anything. Tony glanced over but didn't interrupt. He was still busy drawing armor into existence. Pepper folded her arms. You don't exist. Not on paper. I exist here. That's not good enough. I tilted my head slightly. It's all you're going to get. Her gaze flicked to Godzilla. I assume that's classified, too. He doesn't answer to classification. Pepper studied him for a moment. Her posture shifted. Less formal. More grounded. He's not just a pet. No. But he listens to you. Yes. She looked down at Godzilla. He stared back, head tilted, spines pulsing gently with quiet light. Nothing hostile. Just present. Is he dangerous? Very. And you bring him into homes. Only when I don't expect trouble. That gave her pause. Her mouth tightened, but she didn't step back. Is he why you saved Tony? I didn't answer. Not because I was hiding anything but because I didn't know the answer myself. She studied my face for a long time. Then turned, slowly, back toward the stairs. Before she left, she said, he trusts you. Which means I have to, for now. But if that changes, I'll already be gone, I said. She nodded once and left without another word. Tony finally looked up. You always this charming. Only when I'm being watched. He laughed quietly. Godzilla stood, stretched, and walked to the edge of the platform. He looked out at the ocean, plates glinting in the afternoon sun. Tony followed his gaze. Whatever he is. I think he scares me more than anything I've built. Good, I said. Chapter 11, Blood in the Quiet Corners. Shredder's POV. The cliffside air smelled like salt and copper. Tony stood at the edge of the workshop platform, squinting into the afternoon light. His arc reactor glowed faintly through the thin grey shirt he wore, the circuitry beneath his skin pulsing in rhythm with something deeper resolve, maybe. Or guilt. It was hard to tell with him. He turned toward me, arms folded. What do you want? He asked. Straightforward. Stark didn't waste time anymore. Not after caves. I didn't answer immediately. Godzilla was sitting behind me on the steel deck, breathing slow, his tail curled around his claws like a lion coiled beneath a throne. Banner stood to the side, his arms crossed tight, eyes already darting like a man who never saw the same world twice. I looked at Tony. "Give me a name," I said. "One that works." Tony blinked. "Like, a fake ID?" "Yes. Clean. Functional. I want records." "Done," he said without hesitation. "What else?" "Money." He smiled faintly. "That's easy. And a place to live. Quiet. No neighbors. I've got 3, take your pick." He looked over his shoulder, then back. "Anything else?" I shook my head. "All right," he said. "I'll have Pepper handle it." He turned to leave, then paused. Looked back. "Thank you," he said. "Not a joke. Not a throwaway." I gave a slight nod. Then I left. We moved fast. Banner walked stiffly beside me as we reached the long dirt slope above the estate, where the air got colder and the city became a distant glow behind cliff and sky. Godzilla trotted ahead, occasionally turning back to watch us, his glowing plates flickering faintly with each breath. He was quiet now, but he'd grown again. Each step left small indentations in the gravel, his weight now closer to that of a large jungle cat. His gait had shifted. He wasn't clumsy. He knew his mass now. Banner broke the silence. "You really planning to stay in America?" I didn't answer. "I mean, you can't seriously think this place is safe?" "Not with that," he pointed loosely at Godzilla, "following you around." "He's not a that," I said. "Oh, sorry," he snapped. "Your pet, then?" "Companion," I said flatly. Banner stopped walking. I did, too. He looked at me, really looked, face tight with warning. "Companion or not, the military doesn't care. Shield doesn't care. You think they're going to look at him and say, 'Sure, go ahead and take your living weapon for a stroll through Malibu'? They'll take him. Dissect him. Bury him in some lab under Colorado, and you'll never see him again." I didn't blink. Banner's voice rose. "Are you even listening to me?" "I'm listening." "Then answer the damn question. Why stay here? Why America?" I didn't speak. So he pressed again. "Why are you in America if you know what's coming?" I raised my eyes and said nothing. "Hey! Turn around," I said. He frowned. "What?" "Turn around." Banner's shoulders tensed. His breath hitched. Then he turned. And froze. Standing 10 feet behind him, half in shadow, half in sunlight, was a man in a black coat, one eye covered by a leather patch, arms folded like he was standing at a war memorial. Behind him, just off his shoulder, stood a second man. Shorter. Neat suit. Calm eyes. Not smiling. Nick Fury. Phil Coulson. Banner took a step back, almost into me. Godzilla's plates flared, a low heat shimmer curling around his shoulders. Fury's voice cut the silence like a commandment. "Nice creature you've got there." Banner's mouth opened. No sound came out. Fury's gaze didn't move. "We need to talk." Chapter 12, Paper Shields and Verbal Wars. Shredder's POV. The wind bit sharper on the ridge. Godzilla paced behind me in slow, measured loops, his tail brushing dry gravel into the silence. Each step stirred heat through the solace of my boots. His body had grown again slightly. Denser now. His eyes tracked every motion around Fury like a soldier awaiting a command that might never come. Fury didn't flinch. The eye patch wasn't just for show, it anchored the man. Made every stare from him feel calculated, like he wasn't looking at you, but through the thing you might become. Carlson stood slightly behind, expression unreadable, a notepad clutched in one hand, though he hadn't written a word since arriving. He wasn't here to record. He was here to assess. I stood with my arms folded. Banner kept a slight distance, head low, eyes half-shadowed in suspicion. Fury finally broke the silence. "You've been on our radar for 4 days, he said. "Which is impressive, considering you didn't exist 5 days ago." "I didn't ask to be watched." "Doesn't matter. I'm not a threat." Fury's smile didn't reach his eyes. Says the man standing next to a walking nuclear event with claws. "You're the ones who sent satellites," I said. "Don't pretend you didn't like what you saw." Carlson finally spoke. "We didn't like it. We just decided it was too late to stop it." Fury's eye shifted back to me. "So? Let's try this again." He stepped forward, not close, but close enough to show the game had started. "What do you want?" I didn't answer immediately. Godzilla's spines flickered. Fury waited. "I don't have a goal," I said. "Not a plan. No manifesto. No grand vision." "Then why act?" "Because I was there. And I could act." He studied me. "You pulled Stark out of a cave in the middle of hostile territory," he said. "You neutralized 10 rings combatants without drawing a single drone flag. Then you kidnapped Bruce Banner, strong-armed him into exposing a kaiju to gamma radiation, and walked back into American airspace like you were ordering takeout." I didn't respond. "And you still want me to believe you're improvising?" I gave a slow nod. "I do." Fury stared at me. Then just a twitch, he smiled. "You ever hear of the Avengers Initiative?" Banner looked up. "The what?" "A-Team," Fury said. "A forward-facing solution to back-end problems. People with unusual skill sets. Powers. Tempers. The world's changing. We need to change with it. And you want us in?" "I want all 3 of you." Godzilla sat beside me now. "Watching?" I raised an eyebrow. "You want the Hulk? And him?" "I want stability," Fury said. "And you? You're already influencing the field. Might as well do it on our payroll." Banner looked at me. "You seriously considering this?" I said nothing for a moment. "Then, what's the salary?" Fury blinked. "Excuse me. You want my cooperation? You want him?" I gestured to Godzilla, "working under your banner, in your files, wearing your leash. You'll pay for it." Fury's voice dropped an octave. "You want a deal?" "No," I said. "I want compensation." "Then you get loyalty." He studied me. "How much?" 200 million a year. Banner turned to me like I'd asked to buy the moon. Carlson didn't blink. Fury's mouth twitched. "You serious?" 100 million if you want to feel like you won." A long pause. "Then, fine." Carlson blinked. That was the first change in expression I'd seen on him since we met. Fury extended a gloved hand. I didn't take it. But I nodded. "That's agreement," he said. Then he turned, cloak catching in the wind as he walked down the slope. Carlson followed, still scribbling on a notepad that had just now, apparently, become useful. Banner watched them disappear into the ridgeline fog. Then looked at me. "Did we just join a superhero team in, like, 2 minutes?" I turned to him. Deadpan. "Yes." Godzilla made a low noise beside us, not quite a purr, not quite a growl. A sound like amusement. Chapter 13, Meat, Space, and Shared Silence. Shredder's POV. The house looked like something torn out of a billionaire's daydream. 3 floors. Reinforced glass walls. Marble surfaces that reflected the ocean light in shifting waves. Stark had called it a modest property on the coast somewhere between LA and Santa Barbara. To him, it probably was modest. To me, it looked like the kind of place world leaders borrowed during unofficial summits. I stepped through the front door and let out a low whistle. Godzilla padded in behind me, tail flicking across polished stone. His claws clicked lightly with each step, but he didn't seem interested in anything except the sunlight pouring through the south-facing glass. He walked into a wide atrium space, turned a slow circle, then dropped down onto the floor like he owned the place. Banner came in last. He didn't whistle. He just looked up. "Jesus," he muttered. "This isn't a house. This is an estate." I moved deeper inside, running my hand along the matte wood paneling. Cool to the touch. Newly installed. Still smelled faintly of lacquer and ozone. I found the master bedroom on the second floor. Massive. A wide bed, blackout shutters, private balcony with ocean view, and a walk-in closet I'd never use. "I call this one," I said. Banner's voice floated up from the lower hall. "Figures." He settled on a room downstairs smaller, but it had a wide picture window that overlooked the sea cliffs. No TV. No distractions. Just solitude. He seemed to like that. When I came back down, he was staring at the horizon. "This place," he said. "It's quiet. Almost too quiet." "Beats a cave," I said. He snorted. "You and Stark with the caves." Godzilla yawned beside me, sharp teeth flashing for half a second before he slumped onto the floor near the staircase, tail coiled tightly. Banner looked over. "Where's he going to sleep?" "With me," I said. Banner raised an eyebrow. "He doesn't crush the bed. He shrinks when he sleeps." "Convenient." Godzilla opened one eye. "Just one." I walked into the kitchen and started poking around the cabinets. Fully stocked. Top-end appliances. Automated delivery hookups. Stark had over-prepared. He always did. "Food." Banner called. I pulled out my phone and started ordering. "All the food," I said. "High protein. Dense calories. Bulk orders." He wandered into the kitchen as I tapped in the last request. "Planning a barbecue." "Feeding him." Banner glanced down at Godzilla, who perked up slightly as I opened the fridge and tossed a piece of frozen beef onto the counter. "Yeah," Banner said slowly, "that's gonna be an issue." I shrugged. "He's burning through calories like jet fuel." Banner leaned against the counter. "No offense, but it's a miracle you had the foresight to ask Fury and Stark for money. Otherwise I'm pretty sure you'd be robbing butcher shops just to keep that lizard full." "He's not a lizard," I said without looking up. "He's Godzilla." "Right." A long silence passed between us. Then Banner said, "But seriously, how were you planning to feed him if they said no?" I paused. Then turned to Godzilla, who was now fully awake, staring at the fridge with a look that could only be described as hopeful. I walked over, crouched down, and gently scratched behind his largest dorsal plate. He leaned into it just a little. "I wasn't," I said quietly. "I had no idea." Banner looked at me, then at Godzilla, who let out a low, satisfied rumble. "Well," Banner said, "it's a good thing we're on the payroll now." Chapter 14, Bargains Measured in Tons. Shredder's POV. Morning came on slow wings. Soft sun over glass walls. The ocean glinting like spilt mercury beyond the cliffs. Seagulls somewhere out of sight, crying across the horizon. Inside the house, everything was still. Godzilla was curled at the foot of the bed, smaller again, spines dimmed, tail twitching faintly with dreams I couldn't begin to guess. I was half asleep when the knock came. Not polite. Not frantic. Just 3 heavy, deliberate raps against steel and reinforced glass. I sat up slowly. My shirt clung to me warm from sleep and dried salt. My body ached from the stiffness of still being on guard, even when I wasn't moving. I reached for the black hoodie draped over the chair, pulled it on, and made my way down the stairs. Banner met me halfway, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He was barefoot, hair sticking out on one side. "Who knocks like that at 8 in the morning?" he muttered. "People who think the sun answers to them," I said. I opened the door. Nick Fury stood on the stone porch, coat flapping slightly in the breeze. Behind him, a black SUV idled at the edge of the driveway. "Morning," he said. "Mission." I stared. Godzilla padded up behind me, nudging the back of my calf like he could smell the word problem from across the room. Banner groaned. "Already?" I blinked slowly. "What is it this time?" Fury's expression didn't change. "New Mexico." "Why?" "We found a hammer." I blinked again. "A what?" Fury stepped forward, voice flat. "A hammer. Buried in the desert. No one can lift it. Not the military. Not tech. Nothing." I raised an eyebrow. "And you want Godzilla to try?" "Exactly." Banner scratched the back of his head. "Why am I going if it's just a hammer?" I gestured vaguely. "Yeah, why am I going?" Fury looked at us like we were both idiots. "Because you're the only one who can control him." That shut both of us up. Fury turned away. "Planes waiting. 2 hours. Pack light. Hot desert." He didn't wait for more questions. Just walked back to the SUV like the conversation was a memo he'd already filed. Banner closed the door behind him. "Already a mission?" I didn't reply. Instead, I jogged back out into the drive. Fury was halfway into the car when I called out. "Wait." He paused. I stopped beside him, breath slow. This wasn't in the original deal. He looked at me sideways. "We agreed on active consultation." "This is consultation." "This is New Mexico," I said. "And a hammer buried in the sand still counts." I folded my arms. "Extra 35 million. He raised an eyebrow. 5. 34. 10. 33. His eye narrowed. 15. I didn't blink. 32. 20. I exhaled. 29. 25, he said flatly, "Final offer." Silence. I stared at him. He stared back. Then, "Fine." He nodded once. "Transfer goes through if the mission doesn't go sideways." "It won't." He gave a dry half smile. "You say that now." Then he got into the car and disappeared into the morning sun. When I came back inside, Banner was in the kitchen, staring at the delivery crates we'd gotten the night before. Godzilla had already cracked open 2 boxes, feathers and heat still lingering in the air as he gulped down another headless rotisserie chicken. Banner looked at me over the rim of his coffee mug. "Did you just haggle with a government agency?" "Yes." He blinked. "Did it work?" I opened the fridge, pulled out a protein shake, and nodded. "Extra 25 million. Banner stared at Godzilla, who was currently inhaling the last of an entire tray of grilled salmon. He exhaled slowly. "That's good thinking." I patted Godzilla on the head, who let out a low, satisfied rumble. I need the money, I said. For this little guy. Banner didn't argue. Godzilla belched once. Banner just nodded. Yet. That tracks. Chapter 15, Weight Beyond Worth. Shredder's POV. The shield jet sliced through the sky like a blade of carbon fiber silence. We didn't talk much during the flight. Banner slept with his head tipped back against the wall, arms crossed tight, one leg jittering unconsciously. Godzilla lay curled at my feet, smaller than usual for mobility, about the size of a wolfhound but dense enough to make the floor strain beneath him. His breath was steady, slow, the soft glow in his plates pulsing to the hum of the engines. I watched the clouds fall behind us. Watched the world stretch flat below. We landed in New Mexico in under 2 hours. Flatlands. Dust plains. The sun hung low and hot, the light turning everything into the color of bone. A temporary shield perimeter had been set up around a shallow crater in the desert. White tents. Mobile labs. Armed personnel stationed casually, too casually. They didn't understand what they were guarding. Yet. Carlson was waiting for us near the edge of the site. He smiled, polite but distant. Glad you could make it. Banner squinted against the sun. Barely got out of the house. Carlson ignored the sarcasm. His eyes dipped briefly to Godzilla, who walked beside me with even steps, his tail swaying like a living metronome. Then back up to me. This way. We followed. The crater wasn't large, maybe 20 feet across. Shallow. A depression in red sand and scorched rock, ringed with cordoned fencing and motion detectors. In the center, like a monument someone had buried mid-fall, sat a hammer. Silver head. Short handle wrapped in leather. Circular carvings down the side. It didn't look like a weapon. It looked like an ending. Banner tilted his head. That's it. Mjolnir, Carlson said. So far, nothing short of a wrecking crane has budged it. I stepped forward slowly. Heat radiated from it, not temperature, but presence. Like it was watching. Judging. I crouched, looked at it from the side, then placed one hand on the handle. Lifted. Nothing. The weight was more than mass. It didn't budge. I let go. Try it, I said to Banner. He hesitated. You're joking. Just try. He sighed, walked forward, and gripped the handle. Pulled. Then grunted and pulled again. Still nothing. All right, that's enough embarrassment for one day. I turned to Godzilla. He was already looking at it. He padded forward, careful not to step too close to the hammer. His spines dimmed as he approached instinctively, as if he understood this was something ancient, something holy. He sat before it, tilted his head. Then, slowly, raised one paw. Clawed fingers curled gently around the handle. And pulled. Not much. But the hammer moved. Only slightly. Barely an inch. But it moved. My breath caught. Even Banner straightened. Godzilla released the hammer and stepped back. Carlson's voice was unusually quiet. That shouldn't be possible. My mind spiraled. He's not human. He's not corrupted by pride or guilt or violence driven by ego. He's a force of nature. An animal, yes. But pure. Unfiltered. Nothing in him lies. Maybe that's what it takes. I knelt beside him, placing one hand on his shoulder. Good, I said softly. That's enough. And then we weren't alone. A dust cloud rolled in across the desert path. A van screeched to a halt outside the perimeter. Doors opened. Jane Foster stepped out first, sunburned, wind-cut, defiant. Beside her, Eric Selvig clutched a folder of notes and looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. Darcy trailed behind, phone in hand. But it was the last figure that made the air feel heavy. He walked shirtless. Mud streaked. Muscles coiled beneath bruised skin. Beard scruffed, hair wild. Eyes like a storm waiting for permission. Thor. He stared at the hammer. Then at Godzilla. His mouth twisted slightly. Tell your beast to drop it. Godzilla tilted his head again. I placed a hand on his neck. Let it go. He obeyed. Thor stepped forward and reached for the hammer without hesitation. His hand wrapped around it. He pulled. And nothing happened. Not even the inch that Godzilla had moved it. Thor frowned. Planted both feet. Pulled again. Still nothing. Then he dropped to his knees and let out a ragged breath. His voice cracked not with rage, but with a grief that came from somewhere deeper. Father, he whispered, have you truly cast me out? I stood still, eyes on the hammer. This is it, I thought. This is where Odin stripped him of his power. When the lesson begins. He's not a god right now. He's just a man with memory and pride and nothing to hold onto but the idea of who he used to be. Coulson stepped forward. Should we? I shook my head once. Let him be. Chapter 16, What Only Beasts May Lift. Shredder's POV. Thor's shadow fell over the sand beside me. He stared at Godzilla like a man trying to reconcile a myth with a mirror. His arms hung loose at his sides, shoulders sun-reddened and streaked with dust. He didn't move like a god. He moved like someone who used to be one. You, he said slowly, voice raw, have a creature who defies not only physics, but worth. I didn't answer. I just met his eyes. He nodded toward the hammer still resting in the dirt, just inches from where Godzilla had dropped it. Tell it to lift the hammer again. Godzilla sat back on his haunches, head tilted, spines pulsing faintly in rhythm with his breath. I rested a hand on his shoulder, the warmth under my palm like slow fire. Go ahead, I said. He moved without hesitation. No tension in his limbs. No sense that he feared what might come. Just one clawed paw curling around the handle and lifting. This time, not an inch. He raised it fully, clean off the ground, the head glinting in the morning light as he held it upright. No resistance. No drama. Like it weighed nothing at all. Thor watched in silence. His breath hitched once. Not loud. But I heard it. His hand slowly closed into a fist at his side. He's worthy, he said, more to himself than anyone else. Your beast. I didn't correct him. Thor stepped forward. Not to fight. Not to argue. Just to stand beside what he'd lost. He looked down at Mjolnir in Godzilla's claw, then reached out. His fingers hovered just above the metal, barely brushing the edge of the handle. And then he pulled back. No, he whispered. No, it's not mine anymore. He turned away. He took 3 steps, then stopped. Goodbye, Mjolnir. There was no rage in his voice. Just the hollow quiet of someone who'd expected to be struck down, and wasn't. I watched him walk toward the shield perimeter. He didn't look back. Didn't ask for answers. Didn't plead. Only nodded once when 2 agents approached. You're coming with us for questioning, one of them said. He didn't fight. Didn't speak. Just let them lead him toward the black transport van waiting outside the perimeter. Wait. Jane Foster's voice rang across the sand. She was running after them, arms flailing in confusion. Who are you? Why did you fall from the sky? What is this hammer? What's happening? Eric Selvig was behind her, clutching his notes like they could protect him. Darcy stumbled after both of them, trying to keep her phone from falling out of her jacket. None of them had answers. Neither did I. SHIELD agents surrounded them. Not aggressively, just firmly. Containment protocol. Standard silence. We have questions, one of the agents said. That was all the explanation they got. And then they were gone, sealed inside another transport, the doors clicking shut behind them like punctuation at the end of a sentence none of them had written. I looked down. Godzilla was rolling Mjolnir back and forth in the sand. Not reverently. Just curious. Like it was a polished stone, or a seashell, or a warm piece of sun-baked metal that made interesting shapes when he nudged it. His claws scraped faint trails in the sand as he tapped the hammer gently with his snout. Like a dog with a new chew toy. I knelt beside him. Ran my hand along his spine. He looked at me. And I thought not for the first time that I didn't know what he was. Not really. Elsewhere classified Level 7 Shield COMM deck. Third-person POV Nick Fury. The image flickered across the screen in hard resolution, a reptilian claw, easily 3 feet long, lifting Mjolnir like a child pulling up a stick. Fury leaned back in his chair, one hand covering his mouth. He picked it up, Coulson's voice said through the line. Lifted it clean. No hesitation. Full elevation. Was it reaction or intention? Fury asked. Hard to say. He's calm. Not playing with it like it's sacred. More like it's just there. Fury narrowed his eye. And the others? Thor surrendered. He's in custody. Jane Foster and her team too. No resistance. Fury tapped a finger against the desk. They'd brought in monsters before. Gods, even. People who thought themselves superior to the earth because they came from somewhere else. But this creature was different. No history. No mythology. No politics. Just presence. And it had moved Mjolnir. Not because it thought it should. Not because it believed it could. Just because it was. Fury's voice came low. Controlled. Do not provoke it. Do not isolate it. We don't know the ceiling on this thing's power, and I don't want to find out by accident. Yes, sir. Keep eyes on it. Let Shredder handle the leash. If it's playing ball, let it play. Coulson paused. And the bounty? Fury nodded. Transfer the 25 million. They earned it. He clicked the line off. The screen faded into darkness. Only his reflection remained, one eye in shadow, the other watching the silence. Chapter 17, The Thunder in His Claws. Shredder's POV. The sun climbed higher while the desert held its breath. The heat shimmered above the crater, bending light into soft illusions, but none of it seemed to touch him. Godzilla. He was still playing. Not like a soldier. Not like a beast. Like a child. Mjolnir spun in the air as he tossed it, claws flicking it upward with unnatural ease. It arced, climbed, shimmered, and fell, and every time, he caught it like he had done this 1,000 times before. Sometimes in his teeth. Sometimes with a swipe. Once, he let it bounce off his back and roll to his side like a pebble he could simply scoop up again. He growled once, not threateningly. Just a giddy, primal noise. The sound of something finding joy. And then thunder cracked. Not in the sky. From the hammer. A sudden flash, white blue, and a boom that split the silence like it owed it nothing. The sound rolled across the flatlands, shaking the shield tents, rattling the bones in my chest. Godzilla looked up, mouth slightly open, tail swishing once. He had no idea what he'd just done. Then he threw it again. The hammer spun higher this time, so high I lost it in the sun. It came down harder. And nearly clipped my skull. Woe, enough! I shouted, stepping back with my arms up. The hammer struck the sand beside me, embedding in the ground with a force that cracked the earth in a 10-foot radius. Dust kicked up. A shockwave ran under my feet. Godzilla stopped. He blinked at me, Mjolnir already back in his claws. He held it like it was his by right. Like he'd forgotten what not holding it felt like. I raised a hand slowly. That's enough fun for now, all right? No more throwing lightning until we know what it does. He tilted his head but obeyed. He always did, when I spoke like that. Footsteps approached. Coulson, clipboard under one arm, dust on his slacks. Just thought I'd tell you, he said calmly. Transfer cleared. 25 million. You're paid. I nodded. Pulled my phone from my jacket pocket and checked. The balance sat there. A number so large it didn't feel real. But the screen didn't lie. Thanks, I said. No problem, Coulson replied. He looked over at Godzilla, then back at me. Is he okay? He's having a great time. That's what I was afraid of. I left him standing by the fence and headed toward the main facility tent where they'd taken Thor and the others. The inside was cooler, filtered through thick polymer flaps and portable A/C units. I walked past agents who didn't try to stop me. They knew who I was now. Or at least, they knew what followed me. The door opened to a makeshift holding room. Concrete floor. Table. Chairs. No restraints. Thor sat slumped in one corner, wrists resting on his knees. Still defeated. Still quiet. I stepped in. Closed the flap behind me. I have a question. He didn't look up. What does it mean, I said slowly, if someone else lifts Mjolnir? At that, his head rose. Eyes tired. But clear. If they are mortal, he said, it means they are worthy. Chosen by the enchantment. He paused. If they are not, then they were not forged to carry it. But if they still do, if the hammer does not reject them. I waited. Thor looked me in the eye. Then they are the god of thunder now. My breath didn't catch. But something inside me went still. He's not a man, I said. Not a god. He is what the hammer accepts, Thor replied. That is all that matters. I left without another word. Walked back into the light, shielding my eyes as I stepped into the full heat of day. Godzilla was lying in the crater again. Tail curled, Mjolnir balanced between his claws. Like it had always belonged to him. He looked up when I returned. And I knew now, without needing to guess, he had power. Not just mass. Not radiation. Not instinct. Something divine. Elsewhere realm eternal, Asgard. Third-person POV Odin Alfather. From high above the stars, Odin saw the hammer, the gift, the curse, the test resting in the claws of something ancient. Not forged by gods. Not born of frost or flame. But it held Mjolnir. And Mjolnir let itself be held. Odin's single eye narrowed. His voice was quiet, yet thunder still moved through it. How curious! He watched the beast tilt its head, tap the hammer once against the earth, and let out a low, playful growl. Not man. Not God, Odin murmured. Not broken, not cruel. Pure in purpose. Empty of vanity. He sat back on the golden throne. How interesting, he whispered, eyes gleaming. How, very interesting. Chapter 18, The Watcher and the War Beast. Shredder's POV. The Bifrost hadn't opened. Not yet. but I could feel its gaze. Far beyond the edge of Earth's sky, past what satellites could name or telescopes could claim, there were eyes watching. Not eyes like mine, soft, fallible, flawed. Eyes forged of fire and starlight. Eyes that saw. Heimdall. I didn't know how I knew his name. Maybe the hammer whispered it. Maybe the sky did. Maybe something old and terrible in Godzilla's blood had reached back through the cosmos and stirred the gaze of Asgard's guardian. But I felt it. Like heat on the back of the neck. Like breath on skin from something too high to climb toward. He was watching. The flight home was quiet. The shield jet cut through the sky in silence, just like the last time. But everything felt different. Banner said nothing, arms folded across his chest, head tilted toward the window as if there were answers written in the clouds. Godzilla slept at our feet, curled loosely with Mjolnir tucked beneath his tail like a favorite bone. No alarms. No containment units. No threats. They didn't dare. The entire flight crew walked a little softer when they passed him. Their eyes never met mine for more than a second. And when the wheels touched down, no one told us where to go. They just opened the hatch and cleared the way. Outside, a black car idled at the edge of the tarmac. Banner slid into the passenger seat. Godzilla trotted beside me, dragging the hammer with his tail like a dog refusing to let go of its leash. We drove home in silence. Malibu came back into view. Sky turned to gold. Salt wind pushed across the cliffs as the sea churned far below. When we pulled into the drive, the sun was beginning to fall. Its dying light touched the edge of the coast in long, blood-orange lines. I stepped out. Banner stretched beside me, bones popping audibly. Godzilla bounded out after us, happy, tail swinging and the hammer clunking behind him, half bouncing across the pavement. "Careful," I muttered, stepping aside as it nearly clipped my shin again. He gave me a sheepish look and continued tossing it into the air like a child with a snowball. Then came the sound. A sharp mechanical whine. Air shifted around us as pressure dropped. A red and gold blur descended from the sky and hit the driveway with a loud clank. Tony Stark. Helmet slid back. Wind tangled his hair. His eyes scanned all three of us. "You guys look like you fought a city-leveling villain," he said. "Like, two nuclear bombs in a black hole, kind of tired." I looked at Godzilla spinning Mjolnir lazily in one claw, his tail wagging behind him like he'd never been happier. "I wish," I muttered. Another bolt of lightning cracked in the distance as the hammer bounced once, discharging a spark into the concrete. I stepped out of the way. Tony tilted his head. "Is that a hammer? A magic hammer?" Banner groaned softly. "You don't want to know." "Actually," Tony said, tapping a finger to his temple, "I think I very much do want to know." He looked back at me. "The money came through, by the way. That little salary arrangement you wrestled out of fury." He smirked. "Check your phone." I pulled it out. The number hit me like a punch. 10 billion. Stark Industries shares. Transfer confirmed. Class A stock. Not just money. Power. Not in the form of missiles or reactors. In the form of ownership. I didn't say anything. Just slid the phone back into my pocket. Tony's thrusters ignited with a sharp hiss. "Well," he said, turning toward the open sky, "if you ever figure out why your pet lizard is carrying Asgardian WMDs, give me a call." Then he flew. A blast of light, a roar of wind, and he was gone just like that. Banner looked at me as we walked toward the house. "You gonna tell me what you're gonna do with $10 billion? I looked down at Godzilla, who was chewing the edge of Mjolnir now like it might make lightning taste better. "I'm gonna keep feeding this little guy," I said. And maybe buy a continent if I run out of cows. Banner didn't laugh. But he didn't disagree, either. Chapter 19, A Toy Taken, A Throne Offered. Shredder's POV. The house was unusually quiet for once. No thunder, no explosions, no craters blooming out back like mushrooms in wet soil. Just the low hum of a reactor core purring inside a suitcase-sized arc unit Tony had laid across the coffee table. Banner sat cross-legged on the rug, tablet in hand, scribbling calculations and muttering about heat dispersal curves. I was stretched out on the couch, half asleep, watching as Stark flicked through projections of his Mark III armor that had barely survived the last outing. Chest output's still lagging, he muttered. I rerouted the conduits twice, but the capacitor hits a thermal spike every time I go over 70% repulsor yield. It's inefficient. Banner didn't look up. Because you're using your ego as insulation. I snorted. Tony rolled his eyes. Glad I brought both of you into this, he said dryly. Remind me to put sarcasm as your official shield designation. Outside, the sky cracked. All three of us looked up at once. A bolt of lightning had laced across the coastline. No storm. No clouds. Just one wild streak of light across open sky and a faint, echoing boom. Then we heard it again. Thud. Thud. Boom. Godzilla. He was in the backyard, leaping up and tossing Mjolnir skyward like it was a frisbee made of war metal. Every time it came down, it hit the earth with a clap of thunder that shook the tile under my feet. He caught it with his tail once and spun in a circle, howling with something dangerously close to glee. Tony blinked. So, does that come with a volume dial? I opened my mouth to answer, then bang. A violent, ringing slam echoed through the walls. We all flinched. I was up in an instant. Godzilla's thunder play had stopped. Banner got to his feet, brushing dust off his knees. What the hell was that? I didn't answer. I was already halfway to the glass door. Outside, Godzilla was sitting in the middle of a cracked stone path, shoulders slumped. There was no hammer in sight. Hey, I said, crouching in front of him. What happened? He looked at me, blinking slow, muzzle scrunched. Something had shaken him. The thunder had stopped, and that told me more than his posture ever could. Banner reached the door behind me. Is he okay? I don't know, I said. The hammer's gone. 10 minutes passed. We were back inside when the storm rolled in. Not a storm in the clouds, one in the room. A sudden, soft crack of displaced air. A flicker of ozone. And then a knock at the front door. I opened it. Thor stood there. Armor reformed. Hair tied back. Mjolnir rested in his palm once again like it had never left. I am sorry, he said. Godzilla growled softly from behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know his eyes had gone narrow. I did not take it by force, Thor continued. It flew to me. It returned of its own will. I am worthy again. His voice carried the weight of a man trying not to sound triumphant. Godzilla stepped forward. His claws tapped against the hardwood floor as he walked. He stopped a foot away from Thor and glared up at him with a look so pointed, so childishly furious, I half expected him to start biting ankles. Thor crouched slowly, resting the hammer's head gently on the floor. I know you do not understand, he said softly. But it is not a toy. It is mine. Yet you wielded it without anger. Without pride. Godzilla said nothing. Just kept staring, tail twitching. Thor smiled, patient. Come with me. To Asgard. I will show you the royal vault. There are relics there beyond imagining. Perhaps, you will find something you like better. Godzilla tilted his head. His spines dimmed. Then he let out a low, inquisitive hum. He was listening. Thor turned his gaze to me. You may come as well. Both of you. But I leave it to you to decide. I didn't answer right away. I looked back at Banner. He was staring at me with a look I couldn't place. Confused. A little betrayed. You're really leaving? I shrugged. Why not? Tony stood from the couch. So you're just gonna take your nuclear dinosaur and go hang out with the Norse god of lightning? Thor corrected him quietly. Thunder. I turned back to Tony. Yet. I am. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Godzilla walked past me and stood beside Thor. The grudge had melted the second Asgard was mentioned. He was already excited again. Already dreaming in colors I couldn't see. Thor lifted his hand to the sky. A crack of light split the world. The air warped. Space bent. A wide column of light opened above the cliffs behind the house Bifrost. A window between realms. Heimdall was waiting. Thor stepped into the light. Godzilla followed, tail swishing, plates glowing like a heartbeat. I looked back one last time. Banner. Still standing there, arms crossed. Tony. Trying not to look impressed. I'll send postcards, I said. Then I stepped into the light. Chapter 20, Born of Starfire. POV shift, Dr. Bruce Banner. The line clicked twice before it connected. Fury, came the voice, flat and unreadable. Banner rubbed his forehead. It's me. Go. They're gone. A pause. A long one. Define gone, Fury said. They took the Bifrost. Another silence. You're telling me Shredder and the lizard just left the planet? Thor came back, Banner said, trying to keep the weariness out of his voice. He said he was worthy again. The hammer flew to him. And then he invited them to Asgard. And Shredder said yes. He didn't even hesitate, Banner muttered. I assume he took the 25 mil with him. No. Just the monster. Fury exhaled sharply on the other end. Banner didn't ask what that meant. He could guess. He looked out the window, toward the ocean, where the last echo of Bifrost light had vanished. He didn't say it out loud, but something heavy had shifted. And S.H.I.E.L.D. had no control over it. POV shift, Shredder, first person. Asgard was unsettling. Not in the way that Earth's dangerous places were. It wasn't chaos or noise or violence. It was perfection. Marble courtyards stretched beyond sight, etched in gold filigree that caught the sunlight in ways my eyes hadn't evolved to process. The air was clean, too clean, no smog, no static hum of electrical life. Just sky, wind, and age. I walked beside Thor down a wide avenue that overlooked a city sculpted into mountains of polished stone. Godzilla trotted ahead, dragging Mjolnir behind him like a wagon wheel. It clunked and sparked against the smooth ground, but no one stopped him. Asgardians stared. A few warriors froze mid-sparring to look. I couldn't tell if it was fear or awe. Where did you find him? Thor asked beside me. His voice had softened since Earth. More curious. I didn't find him, I said. He hatched. Thor raised a brow. From what? An egg. He blinked. You raised this beast. I took care of him. He grew fast. The hammer came later. Thor looked ahead at Godzilla, who had started to leap toward some stairs, Mjolnir whirling behind him like a leash on fire. And now he plays with a weapon made for gods. I didn't answer. Because I didn't have one. Thor led me deeper into the city, through winding golden corridors and down a long stairwell that led into the heart of the palace. The air changed as we descended. Heavier. Charged. I don't usually bring others here, Thor said. Few who are not can see it. Vault. He nodded once. 2 guards pulled open thick doors made of some obsidian-colored alloy I didn't recognize. Inside was silence. The kind that made your ears ring just to fill the void. The royal vault. Godzilla walked in ahead of us. The walls were lined with weapons, relics, armor, some encased in crystal, others floating midair, humming softly with power too old for translation. I couldn't name half the things I saw, but my instincts recoiled from more than a few. Godzilla didn't hesitate. He wandered. Sniffed. Moved between pedestals like a child in a museum. And then he stopped. In the far corner, on a raised dais of black stone, sat something that looked like a weapon but wrong. Familiar, but wrong. It was a hammer, yes. But longer in the handle. Broader in the head. Its silver gleamed with a faint pulse, and when I looked closer, it glowed not with runes but with radiation. Godzilla stepped closer. Thor, I said, keeping my voice even. What is that? Thor looked. And his expression darkened with thought. That, he said slowly, was forged from the remnants of a neutron star. Too unstable to wield by hand. It is not enchanted like Mjolnir, it carries no oath. But it holds power. The kind that sings to anything born of radiation. I blinked. So basically, a starborn hammer. Exactly. I looked at the weapon again. It didn't hum like the others. It throbbed. With heat. With light. Like a heart. Godzilla reached forward. And picked it up. No hesitation. No reaction from the weapon. No rejection. He held it in both claws, swung it once and it didn't spark like Mjolnir. It roared. A pulse of blinding light carved across the vault wall, not lightning but something hotter, a beam, focused and clean. I stepped back instinctively. Godzilla looked at me. Then smiled. Like he'd found a piece of himself. Thor stood still. No anger. No warning. Only wonder. Perhaps this one, he said softly, was never meant for gods after all.